and welcome back to a new video. Today I'm going to do a gouache painting of this beautiful daffodil field. So I'm doing this in gouache and I'm using Holbein gouache, and I will make the line work available for you to download if you want to paint along with me, and that line work will be available to download on my Patreon page, totally free of charge, and I'll leave a link to that below in the video description. So I'll go through everything I do step by step and show you how I mix the colours. So I hope you'll follow along. Okay, so first of all, I'm squeezing out some of the paint onto my palette. I do already have some colours on that palette which I'm going to use because I don't want to waste them. But you really don't need much of Holbein gouache because it's really strong. And I've found that I actually mainly use white and then I'm tinting the white with the other colours. So I need plenty of white, and I've got two whites, one for actually painting white highlights and one for mixing with other colours. And I've got these beautiful sets of gouache, so I'm just looking for a nice sky blue. I'm going to start with the sky, and I found this perfect colour here. I'll list all the colours that I'm using down below in the description. Okay, so I'm just, I did sketch out a little bit of a line drawing, so I'm just going to finish that off and then get started. So we'll be using a few different brushes. This one is a Filbert number 8 and it's Velvet Touch Princeton, but again I'll list everything in this description below. So I'm starting off, I need a sky colour. So I'm using the white and then I'm adding a tiny little bit of that blue, which is called Geisha blue. And I'm making it quite watery because this is going to be the base layer of the painting. So the base layer is just going to be a really thin wash of the gouache. That way when I add thicker colours over the top, it won't be reactivated. Then I'm taking that same mix that I've just mixed and adding a little bit of the blue black into that, so that'll be the shadow colour for the clouds. So I'm just painting in the blue area, but I'm not going to put the blue where I want the clouds. Now I've made a watered down mix of the white, and I'm just kind of going around the edge of that blue line and making some cloud shapes with that. Then to the base of the clouds I'm adding some of the shadow colour, and I'm not too worried about what it looks like if it's a bit messy because I'm going to blend it a little bit more later on. Now I'm adding some more concentrated white to the top area just to whiten those clouds up a little bit, and I'm kind of blending them into the grey underneath. Now just quickly dry it with the heat gun and then back in with some more white again. So it does take a few layers. Moving on to the background mountains. So again I want a really watery mix, so I'm using the blue black and mixing that with some Leek green, and then I add a little touch of white to that and make it fairly watery. So this is for the mountain in the distance. I'm just carefully painting the shape of the top of the mountains, and then I'm just covering that whole middle strip with this wash, but I'm making it quite messy so it gives a little bit of texture in the background. And once that's completely dry, I'm making the same mix again, only I'm making it more concentrated, and then I'm going to add a layer of background trees over the top. So I'm creating that texture just by dabbing the side of the filbert brush, and then I take that colour right down to the bottom where the green fields will start. For the field colour, I'm mixing two greens. The first one is Seedling mixed with lemon, and then the second is a darker green and it's Seedling mixed with Leek green. And now I'm adding a little touch of Vermilion to that just to tone it down because it was a little bit vibrant, just to warm it up a little bit. And to the lighter green, I'm adding a little bit of white. And also a tiny little dab of the Vermilion red, again just to warm that green up a little bit. And then I'm basically just covering that whole bottom area with the lighter green, and I add some more water into it to give it a little bit more flow. And then once that's all covered, while it's still wet, I dab in some of the darker green in areas just to give it kind of uneven finish. Now I'm mixing a little bit of crimson with a little bit of blue black, and I'm just mixing it into that green that was left over on the palette. And while that paint's still wet, I'm making some little dark areas. And now I'm going to paint in some background trees and bushes. So I'm making a much thicker mixture, and the colours I'm using are blue black, leek green and a little bit of white. And then I'm just painting in like the silhouette shapes of the background trees and bushes. Now I'm using a liner brush, and I'm using the same mixture, only I've added a little bit more water to make it a little bit more flowy, so that I can paint in some trees over to the left hand side. So a liner brush is great for doing long strokes. And now I'm going in with pure black over the top of those, and also I'm adding some black to the shadow areas of the background trees and bushes. Now I'm mixing some Leek green with a little bit of white to lighten it a little bit, and I'm going to use this just to dab some leaves onto this tree. So I want some of the black showing through, and I'm just dabbing just to give the impression of leaves. And then I'm going to do that right across to most of the background trees. And I keep adding a little bit more white, making some areas a little bit lighter than others. And And then for this tree here, I'm just adding some sporadic leaves with the Leek green colour. I'm just dabbing in different directions with the brush, and I'm trying not to overdo it. Now I'm using the shadow colour that I made for the cloud, and I'm just adding some streaky paint to this tree bark. Now it doesn't look very good when I first put it on, but once it dries it just gives a nice streaky tree bark texture. And then I'm also adding some of that same colour to some of the other background bushes, just to give a bit of variation in the colour. Now I'm painting in the leaves for the daffodils, and I'm painting two areas of these. So this is the first area, and then the second area there will be larger leaves, and I'm using a mixture of blue black and Leek green, so it's a really dark mixture, and I'm doing like just a strip right across from the left hand side in the middle, and then I'm just making them smaller as they get towards the middle of the page. Now I've added a little bit of white to that mixture, and I'm adding in some of the leaves in that lighter colour just to give a little bit of variation. And then I'm just getting some water on my brush and just reactivating the bottom of those just to blend that in a little bit at the base. Once those leaves are dry, I'm painting in some daffodils with the white paint and a small number 1 round brush. Sorry, it's a little bit out of focus there, but it's only for a minute or so. So I'm varying the size, and then I'm putting just some tiny blobs of paint in the background fields, so that'll just give the impression of distance in the painting. So I'm just doing different little groups and then kind of just making them smaller and smaller as they go further back. And then to make some really tiny dots, I'm using one of these dotting tools. Now I've mixed a light yellow using one called Kerria Japonica yellow, and then I've mixed that with some white, and I'm doing the same kind of thing. So I'm going to have some white daffodils, some yellow daffodils, and now I've made a stronger mix of yellow. That other one was a little bit pale, so yeah, I'm adding some larger yellow daffodils here, and I think that's a much better yellow colour. Now I've mixed a little bit of vermilion into that yellow colour just to make it even darker. It's more of an orange colour, and I'm adding some centres to some of those flowers. And now I'm going to do larger daffodils to the foreground area. So it's the same again what I've already done, only everything's a little bit bigger. So I'm painting some larger leaves and varying the colour of the leaves, and also making things a bit more detailed. I'll make the flowers a bit more detailed, but they're still not going to be like perfect daffodils. It's just an impressionistic style picture. And now I'm adding in some black strokes as well, and then also I've made up a shadow colour, which is just the blue black mixed with some white. So it's kind of a grey, like a bluey grey colour, and that just adds some variation. It looks like a little bit of reflection on the leaves. And now for the larger flowers at the front, I'm just carefully trying to get different daffodil shapes from different angles. So this first one's kind of front on, and this is the largest daffodil in the picture. And then this one is kind of a side view, and then the next one is kind of a side view with the daffodil kind of looking facing down. So yeah, I'm just trying to change it up, and then I'll paint the trumpets in later once this white has dried. Now I'm using the shadow colour that I used for the clouds, and I'm painting some streaks onto the petals, just to give the impression of a little bit of shading. So I'm putting it down first, and then I'll blend it a little bit later on to just try and make it a little bit more realistic. Now I'm starting to paint the trumpets, and I'm using the orange colour that I made up before, and I've added a little bit of blue black to it just to tone it down a bit. So I'm making kind of a jaggedy circle, adding some detail to the middle just to show the centre of the flower, and then I'm also adding some of the yellow colour just to fill that in, and I'm kind of blending it in a little bit with the orange. And now I've got some pure white on my brush, and I'm blending some of that shadow area out just to soften it a little bit because those lines were a little bit harsh. And finally, I'm adding some more highlights to the background trees. So I've made a kind of green mix. It's very similar to the field colour. It's quite a yellowy, bright green. And I'm just adding a few subtle little dots just to bring out those trees a little bit more. Okay, so that's the end of the video. Thank you so much for watching. I really hope you painted along, and if you've enjoyed the video, please give me a like or leave a comment because it really helps my channel grow.